So if any of you have worked in any job during your lifetime, you have probably encountered a bad boss. Anybody? Yes. I have had a couple of them, a couple of very memorable ones. One was so passive-aggressive and annoying, I, along with a few other former employees, actually founded a survivors group. Oh, sorry. Carolyn was drinking. But we founded a survivors group. Yeah, you don't want to snort that through your nose. Yeah, right. We get together and compare notes about how this guy treated each one of us, and it was all very similar, of course. Another boss was so adept at micromanaging and seat checking and being generally mean to everybody, even her own grandchildren called her Granbo, comparing her unfavorably, of course, to the movie character Rambo. It has been said that people do not leave jobs. They leave bad managers. They leave bad bosses. And leadership, it's a tricky old dog, and not everybody gets the hang of it right away. The requirements for leadership, they have changed over the years. More and more companies are moving away from that old command and control, top-down leadership to more egalitarian, collegial, and collaborative atmospheres. No matter how you slice it, though, good leaders are those who can inspire you and challenge you and help you believe in your own potential all at once. They're the ones who have found the way, and they're showing you the way, and these are the people that you want to follow. And there are a few books out there that say Jesus was the guy to follow, though I'm not sure he would much appreciate a book that's out there called Jesus CEO. I don't know. I think Jesus saw himself mostly as a shepherd. Someone who loved those who would flock to him. Someone who had a soft spot for everybody. Even the dumbest sheep in the fold was still Jesus' favorite, right? Even the wolf that threatened his flock was beloved by Jesus. And this jubilance is how we are called to live our lives, like shepherds, looking out for the safety of both the sheep and the wolf, knowing that both of them are originally blessed. Both of them are worthy. Both of them ultimately beloved. And those are the kind of leaders that make you say, oh yeah. I have wanted to be a lot of things in my life. I wanted to be a best-selling author. I wanted to be a rock star in a famous band. I wanted to be a metaphysical theologian. I want to be a millionaire, right? But there's one thing. There is one thing in this whole entire world that I have never, ever, 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 did I mention ever, aspired to be. Anybody got any guesses?
A CEO.
Keith Edwards. That wouldn't be so bad, man.
CEO.
A CEO. A parent? Well, there's that one's on the list, yes. A supermodel. An accordion player.
Amazing.
All good choices, but tightrope walker, never wanted to do that. Sword swallower, no, that's the. I'm well on the way to the bearded lady, so we're working on that. Menopause is helping me with that one.
What is it?
Michael got it. A leader, a CEO. I've never wanted to be a leader. I am the consummate follower. You tell me what you want. You tell me when you want it by. Leave me alone. I can do it for you. I got it. I am eager to fulfill my duties as assigned and not have to be the one making the decisions or plotting the strategy or figuring out how to move some organization forward. I have never once aspired to that role. And you know, God has this weird sense of humor. Even as I protest about not wanting to be a leader, for some reason, leadership keeps getting thrust upon me. I obviously lead this place, I guess, despite myself. I lead the band, kind of. It's like herding cats. But
Hey.
I love cats. The ultimate evidence of God's sense of humor about this whole thing is that several years ago in my day job, my supervisor called me and she asked me to take over the writing of the company's flagship newsletters, one of the ones that makes the most money for them. And the topic is Leadership! I laughed out loud. Oh, the holy. God, what a sense of humor. And now my bosses have promoted me to an actual leadership position. Oh, they're crazy.
You're going to be president next.
Yes, yeah. I'll be the CEO at some point. This, I think, is proof that God doesn't do anything without a good reason. Over the past 3 years of writing this leadership brief, I have read more articles on leadership than I think I ever have in my entire life. It has finally surpassed books about God, I think. I've read more leadership stuff. I just marinate in this kind of advice, and I've learned a thing or two along the way, and I've put that into play in my life and as the reluctant leader of this place. And one of the things that I have learned is that leadership gets a bad rap. My fear of being a leader is directly related to my ego. Now, you've worked for some of these, some use leadership roles to puff themselves up. They want to be seen out front. They want others to adore them and fawn over them. And so then they can use that power over others and lord it over them and control them in some way. But I've never been afraid of leadership going into my head. In fact, my fear is the opposite. I am deathly afraid of being seen as a terrible leader. Someone who can't find their way out of a wet paper bag when the chips are down. So according to chapter 4 in A Course in Miracles, both of these reactions, wanting it and flaunting it and avoiding it, they're both rooted in the ego. They're two sides of that same egoic coin, because both result in more feelings of separation. If I am above you, I am not like you. And the reverse is true. If I am worse than you, then our separation remains real. Both of these types of leadership, of course, says, are rooted in fear. There's a fear that you'll lose people's adoration, or the fear that you won't be adored. The underlying fear, of course, is one of unworthiness. If we're built up, our worthiness feels real. And if we're torn down, our unworthiness is affirmed. Our worthiness, of course, says, is not established by our leadership in whatever form it takes. Our worthiness is established by God, and each of us is worthy of being a leader. Because whether you know it or whether you accept it, everybody in this room is a leader. It may be obvious that I am just because of where I'm standing, but everyone in this room has someone that follows them. Everyone in this room has someone that seeks their advice, that is influenced by them in some way. The definition of leadership, according to writer Mary Pratt in Tech Target, she puts it this way, and I liked this. The ability of an individual or group of individuals to influence and guide followers or other members of an organization. That's leadership. Your ability to guide, your ability to influence, not boss around. You are leaders, jubilants, or what A Course in Miracles calls messengers for God. There's always somebody looking to you for help. There's always somebody looking to you for guidance. And Jesus is clear on what kind of leaders we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be servant leaders, those who don't flaunt their power over others, but gently walks beside everyone who has been put in their path. And the good thing about my job writing about leadership is that, especially since COVID, this has been a big shift since COVID-19, the tone of all these leadership articles began to change. Before the pandemic, there was a lot of advice on how to be that top-down leader. You are the boss, you are the CEO, you are in charge, you dictate what you want, and people do it. And if they don't, if they start asking questions, they can go find another job. I mean, that really was a lot of the leadership stuff I read and wrote about. But now, there's been a shift. These articles are talking more about servant leadership, about being that guide on the side and not the sage on the stage. More and more articles are being written about how to bring compassion and joy, even love, into the workplace. And some of the advice, some of it can get pretty esoteric, but more and more I'm actually seeing some wise and in-depth articles showing leaders the way to model leadership as an act of love, as power with instead of power over. It's as if someone thought of healing. And they thought about the real needs of those that they lead. And instead of inflicting more wounds through toxic forms of top-down command and control leadership, now we're realizing that leadership is just about showing the way to those around us. But you know, there's another key piece about being a good leader, and that is the ability to be a good follower. Breathe deeply. I will step back and let God lead the way. That's what it says in a course today. And I know, as I said, some of you cringe at that statement. Because most of us raised in evangelical Christianity were always taught, trust and obey, for there's no other way. We know that song. That's right. And often we feel betrayed by that trust in God. Something happened to our faith. And we thought God should have prevented us, something from happening or keeping us safe. But something happened and we're disappointed. God should have been there. Where was God in all that? God should protect me from bad things. That's what good leaders do, right? They protect the followers, protect the flock. Here's the truth, though. The God of this faith is the one that is the ego's idea of God. The ego made that up. The only kind of God an ego can create is a disappointing one, because its attributes are that of the ego. The God I was raised with as a kid was kind of schizophrenic. This God was all loving but condemning. Right. It was all knowing, but it didn't stop bad things that it obviously knew about. It didn't stop those bad things from happening. It was omniscient, but often felt absent. Want to know why? Because the egoic religions of this world insist that God is where? Out there. God is outside of you. God is up in the heaven. God is up in the sky. And it's true that there is no place that God is not, but we can only see God out here by first seeing God within. Any God that we have to see first outside of ourselves and then accept into our heart, that's the ego's God. The divinity within us, that higher divine self, that's who we truly are. We are that original blessing that seeks only to bless the world. This is the God that we allow to lead us, that we step back from the ego God and allow it to lead the way. So what is the difference? How do you tell the difference between the ego God and the one in here? The one in here, that divine presence within each of us, that original blessing, it will never, ever instill fear in you. God is not the author of fear, a course says in chapter 4. You are. If you're afraid, that's the ego's God. That ego piece of you that seeks authority from some ego-concocted God outside of you, that's what brings you fear. And when you allow the divinity within yourself to take the lead, though, that leads us only in ways of peace and joy and love. Because that's all it knows. That's all it is. And as we let Spirit begin to guide our steps, we learn the biggest piece of being an effective, holy leader in this world. And that is devotion. Many people in leadership positions today, they miss this one important piece. Even in the leadership articles I read, there's a lot more about coaching those who follow you or how to measure their progress or get them engaged in their work. They rarely speak of devotion, which simply means that we are wholly dedicated to the spiritual progress of those we find following us. Devotion, though, it begins within. All of it starts here. When we become followers of the Holy Spirit within ourselves. Salvation, our reading from a course says, asks that you accept the truth and let it go before you, lighting up the path of ransom from illusion. It is not a ransom with a price. There is no cost but only gain. The ego God says you have to sacrifice something. That the spiritual walk is all about sacrifice. Take up your cross and follow me. It's all about a sacrifice. That's not what this is. That divinity within you, it ransoms you from illusion, but there's no price. There's no sacrifice. And as we become devoted to our own path of spiritual growth led by the holy, then, of course, says, we'll become aware of those around us who are joining us on this holy path. And this is where we got to check our ego and make sure we're not leading from illusion, as the Course calls it. And we'll know we're doing this if we're really enjoying the power we have over others or trying to control them, or we're shirking our duties because we feel unworthy. You may find, the Course says, that you are tempted to still walk ahead of truth. And let illusions be your guide. Your holy siblings have been given you, though, to follow in your footsteps as you walk with certainty of purpose and truth. It goes before you now, that they may see something with which they can identify, something they understand to lead the way. That something that your holy siblings are looking for you and can identify with is your devotion to them. We all know when someone has our best interest at heart and when they don't. Holy leaders are those who are so humble and know that even while they lead others, they too still have so much to learn. So we lead and we follow each other. We are devoted to each other's growth, devoted to learning more and more from Spirit for ourselves in each moment that we can share with those around us. Author and researcher Brene Brown says those moments of devotion don't need to be grand gestures. It turns out, she says, that trust is in fact earned in the smallest of moments. It is earned not through heroic deeds or even highly visible actions, but through paying attention, listening, and gestures of genuine care and connection. So I invite you this morning, Jubilants, begin thinking of yourself not just as a follower. I'm out there on the spiritual path following somebody, but you are a leader too. There may be people ahead of you, but there are people behind you. Because I'm still a follower. I follow each of you. Because everyone in this room, and I'm sure folks watching on the YouTube, every single one of you has taught me something. Even those who aren't in this room anymore, the ones who have gone on over our 12 years, there are people who have come here for a season and they've passed by. They've taught me so much about being a better human being, a better spiritual leader. And the key piece I'm discovering is all about devotion. Being devoted to our own spiritual growth first. I follow and read and listen to a lot of different spiritual teachers throughout the week. And in this way, I'm devoted to my own learning. I'm devoted to my own growth. I haven't just stopped and said, hey, I got it. Now I'm going to give it to you. I ain't got it all, kids. No. I'm still learning how to be a good follower, too. I don't keep any of the lessons I learned. I don't keep them for myself. I bring them back to you. The things that I believe will help you in your growth. I'm devoted to expanding both roles as a leader and a follower. And we don't have to be perfect in our spiritual expansion before we help others and lead others in their spiritual walk. Some leaders, there are a few steps, but we're all walking the same path to God together. That means we're responsible for each other's progress. But at our journeys in Jubilance, a Course assures us there will be no gap, no distance between the truth and you. The truth isn't walking ahead of you or behind you. It is you, it says. All illusions walking on the way you traveled will be gone. Nothing left to keep the truth apart from God's completion. Holy is God's self. Step back in faith and let truth lead the way. You know not where to go. But one who knows goes with you. Let the holy lead you with the rest. And I know the word faith can be tainted by our perceived betrayals by those egoic gods who failed us in the past. But I assure you this morning, this is a different kind of faith because it puts it in its proper place. You put faith in that deep holiness that resides within you, not some schizophrenic, capricious, and unpredictable God that runs around out here. We are on this journey together, Jubilants, and we must be devoted to God and to one another if we are to make progress. But this is a joyful journey, one that has never been undertaken in fear, because there's no condemnation, there's no danger, there's no disappointment. We can't be disappointed with the holy that is within us because it has nothing to offer but love and joy and peace. It offers the only thing that's real. Any perception of disappointment is just the ego trying to drag you back into that illusion of some God outside of yourself that you got to invite in. So I invite you this morning to survey those who are journeying with you in your life, because there are many who you influence in your daily life. And I invite you to be cognizant that you are a role model for a lot of people out there. They see you as a leader. They see you as their leader. But also, look around and see who you're following. What are your teachers teaching you? Are they teaching you God's out here and you got to invite God in? Are they teaching you about the God, the holy, the original blessing that resides within you and needs to be brought out in your leadership role? The salvation of the world depends on all of us becoming what Brene Brown calls a wholehearted leader. Those who are self-aware enough to lead from their hearts rather than unevolved leaders who lead from hurt and fear. Jubilants, we're all leaders, we're all followers, which means we're all teaching and we're all learning. So I invite you to be patient with yourself and be patient with those around you. Train yourself. Train yourself in every moment to see only the original blessing and only the light of love in all of those that the Holy puts along your path to either lead or follow. And be aware, awareness is key here, be aware when fear clouds your vision or the old egoic gods try to pull you back into that fantasy world of top-down command and control, fearful forms of leadership. In those moments, I invite you to say, I will step back and let God lead the way. Or if you like, I will step back and let love lead the way. Let's practice that. Let's say love. I will step back and let love lead the way. I will step back and let love lead the way. That small self, it steps back. And it lets the higher divine self, the Holy Spirit, lead the way. And this jubilance is how you release fear. It's how you step into the kind of loving relationship based on devotion that makes the whole world say, oh yeah.